Hey, it's Kevin DeWitt here. Welcome to another plugin knowledge session. In this session, we're going to check out a compressor from UAD called the 1176. So this is a pretty much, it's a well-recognized emulation of some vintage compressor hardware that's been used in studios all over the world for a very long time and is probably on almost every song on the market out there today and in the past. It's pretty much famous when it comes to recording and mixing engineers. And UAD emulated it, or emulated several versions to allow us people that can't afford the real hardware to mix in the box, getting similar sort of quality and sound. So the compressor is a very fast one. It can be used to do, you can use it to do some subtle compression, but you can also use it to do some pretty extreme squashing and crushing of audio. Now, as I said, there's several versions. There's different styles of the hardware, as well as different qualities of the plugin. So there's some legacy plugins that are of not lesser quality, but they don't have the detail that they have in the more newer versions of the plugins. So we'll sort of quickly run through each of those. The concepts, obviously, I'm going to show you in the UAD, but the concepts apply for any of the plugins that are based around 1176. So, you know, there's lots of them out there. Waves have got one. Soft Tube have got one. You know, Steinberg themselves have one inbuilt in Cubase, and there's just tons and tons of them out there. So, obviously, the tactics I use, or the concepts I show in here, can be used on any of those. They will obviously all sound slightly different, and how authentic they are to the vintage hardware is really hard to say because, for one, I don't have the hardware, and two, every hardware model almost sounded different themselves. So it depends which one they emulate from to what sound they get out of it. So, you know, this Waves will have emulated from a different hardware to what UAD did. So you're naturally going to get a different sound, and to argue which one is the right one is pretty much a mute discussion. There's just no real argument around it. So it's basically pick the one that you like if you want this plugin and try it out on your mix and go with the one that you think sounds the best. And the one that you like the best and can afford, or you have the system. Obviously, if you don't have UAD hardware, you will not be buying UAD plugins. But you can buy the Waves ones, or you can use the inbuilt ones, whatever you like. So let's get into it and check out the controls and play with a few different settings on it so you can get an idea of the sound. Okay, so here we are in a mix. I've just got some drum soloed and just going to check out some of the features. But as you can see, even just doing a basic search here in my favorite plugins, you can see all the various ones. Now, the ones bracketed in MM are mono, but you've got all of these different types. You've got the Rev A, the AE, the LN Rev E, then you've got the LN Legacy and the SE Legacy. So the legacy versions are the ones that haven't been emulated to every detail. The other ones, they've emulated practically every little piece of hardware within the original vintage compressor, down to all the transformers, the power supplies, the whole thing that they could to emulate, they did. But as such, it uses a lot more DSP power. So it is a bit of an extra burden on your system, not massively, but it is there. And the legacy one are obviously sort of cut down versions of it, but they still sound great from that regard. So you can sort of see the difference in the interface. So if I pull each one up, all right, so you can see sort of each one of them here. They're all overlapping, so it's hard to fit them on the screen. But you can see the controls are pretty much identical through all of them. There's nothing really different with the controls, but as I said, it's the quality in the background there. So you got the two legacy ones. These are often referred to as like the silver face and the black face. And then we've got similar over here in the other ones, the full detail ones. This is sort of your silver face here, and this is your black face. And then this was a special updated version, which has a little bit more control and is supposed to be a bit more subtler than the other ones. So let's just quickly flick through the controls. So it's fairly simple to dial these in. Okay, we've got an input gain, and this knob here is how we actually control partly how much compression is applied. With a normal sort of stock standard compressor, you're going to have a threshold control, which is what you usually pull down to determine the threshold that the compressor kicks in. The way we do that in the 1176 is by pushing the input. So the more we push the input, the more the signal goes over the inbuilt threshold and the compressor compresses. We then have an output control, which is very useful for balancing the volume so that we can bypass and unbypass the plugin and have no real gain change in volume so that we can truly compare what we're listening to. We have our attack and release, and the numbers here are a little bit different than what you might expect in that 7 is actually fast on both of these and 1 is slow. So obviously where between is medium to whatever. Then we've got a ratio here, and we've got some set buttons of 4, 8, 12, and 20. So that's 4 to 1, 8 to 1, 12 to 1, 20 to 1. And they actually do have a feature where you can actually hold the shift key and click one of the buttons and it pushes all the buttons in. And it's referred to as the all buttons mode on 1176. It was sort of a hidden feature on the hardware where you could actually jam all the 4 buttons in and you would get some massive weird sort of compression ratios that a lot of people use to absolutely crush the sound of their song. Okay, we've got some buttons over here, meters, which is obviously that's off. So that not only turns the meter off, but it turns the plug-in off. So it's not reducing at all. GR is gain reduction, so the meter is going to show gain reduction, and +8 and +4 is going to show our output level, with +4 being +4 dB at 0 here, and +8 would be +8 dB at 0. So that's our output level, our gain reduction. I always leave it on gain reduction or turn it off if I want to turn it off. So all the ratios are identical on all the models except for the AE version here, which was a more up-to-date one, more subtler, and you'll see that these were 4, 8, 12, and 20. This is 2, 4, 8, and 20. So you've got a lower value here of 2 to 1 if you want to go a little bit subtler with your compression. And as I said, every one of them is identical other than sound. So let's just bypass all of them first, and let's just have a play with one of them. Let me just close them all down. All right, so let's just start with this one here. Here's our drums. So if we start with 4 to 1, bring it in, so you can see instantly our thing is compressing. Now, one other feature you can do, which I forgot to mention on some of these, is when you have a single ratio button pushed in, if you press shift and click it, you can have all the buttons out. And what this does is it will not compress, but it will still impart its hardware sound onto the signal. So it's like passing the signal through the compressor without actually doing any compression. So you're still getting the sound of the transformers and any other analog qualities imparted onto your mix. So if we bring that in and out just for that sake. So a little bit of a difference there, but okay, let's just start with a 4-to-1. So if you watch the meter, ignoring the volume change there, you can see that the amount of compression, because I've got it on gain reduction, let's just turn that down a little bit. So the amount of compression that's happening here, so gain reduction, is controlled obviously by the ratio and the other controls. They all work together, but this is sort of acting almost like a threshold, but it's not really a threshold. It's more gaining the input to push it past the threshold. And the higher and higher it goes, the more it gets crushed. And you'll see I've just flatlined it here going that loud. So you can find a nice respectable level. You might say, okay, up there, getting 5 dB gain reduction. Push your volume back up. So the advantage of the output gain here is that we can compare before and after without a change in volume. If we just bring that back down. Now, as I said, the attack and the release, 1 is slow and 7 is fast, and then you've got anywhere in between there. So we can sort of compare that on the meters here. I'll just put the release fast, but if we start with the attack slow, now you'll see by the meter that it's pretty fast either way. Okay, so you know the difference between the attack is 20 microseconds to 800 microseconds. So they're both very fast. Okay, so this is a very fast compressor. So it's not too obvious to see how it compares. And we could probably notice it more if I push it a little bit harder. So before we do that, we'll play with that in a minute, but let's just jump over to our ratio. So as I said, I got 4-to-1, 8-to-1, 12-to-1, 20-to-1. And we've got our all buttons mode there with them all in. And you can see it's, you know, you can hear it's compressing a lot there. So let's go with a 12-to-1 just out of curiosity. Let's just push it pretty hard. Let's see if we can hear a difference with this. So if we go fast with the attack, the transients are pretty much squashed out of existence. And even at the slow setting, they're still squashed a lot. And it's because we're doing massive compression there. Let's bring it down a bit. You can hear the transients are chopped off a little bit more with the faster attack, but it is quite subtle. As I said, it's very fast anyway, so it would already be affecting the transients pretty quickly. So let's put that back to a medium. Let's just have a listen to the release now. So the release time with this one is a bit bigger difference in range. So we're talking 50 milliseconds to 1100 milliseconds, or 1.1 second. Now you can see an obvious difference in the meter here. It's not really letting go with the slow setting. And we get the faster, we start getting the needle pumping a bit more. It's letting go, it's having a little bit of time to breathe. But you can hear there, if I push both up to fast, we get a nice bit of crunch going on distortion wise. I'll try to balance the levels. That's off. And that's on. So you can hear it's got a bit of distortion, so you can use this compressor to create distortion on your tracks as well and get a bit of crunch out of it. You can back off the attack. So you can back off the ratio. Okay, so then we've obviously got the other styles. So, I mean, that's the extent of the settings, and it's pretty easy to set up there. But, you know, if you set these to be almost identical, I'm curious to hear what the difference is naturally from that state. So we go 8 to 1. So first off, let's actually just do it passing it through. Okay, so I'll do clean, then I'll turn each one on with no compression, just passing it through the hardware. Bigger difference in sound for that one there. Okay, let's put it to 8 to 1. And again, we'll flick between them. There's an obvious volume difference to me there. There's also a big difference in sound from what I can hear. I'm listening to it, I can hear a big difference in sound. This one sounds like it has a lot more sort of brightness and life to it. This one doesn't so much. Let's just see what the settings do on this one. So both are squashing the drums quite a bit there. So I'm obviously doing some of this a little bit over the top as well, so just keep that in mind. So let's just have a quick look at the AE as well. So if we set that to a similar sort of setting, not sure which one it's going to be more like. Now this one here, we have to go to the third button for the 8th. But again, let's see what it does with nothing on. I'll bypass that one. Actually drops the volume. Let's put it to 8 to 1. So we're getting a big volume decrease in this one. Now the other big feature with this one here is you'll see it says slow there. So it also has, this one has a 10 millisecond setting on slow. So if we go fully around to here, this will go down to 10 milliseconds. So we can get this one a lot slower. So we can go extra bit. So you can hear that transients come out with this one. You can hear the transients being squashed. Very squashed. And through. So this one's probably a little bit more versatile. But it is also more modern. The other two are more the traditional vintage style 1176, and this was more of a modern version uptake. But it obviously is a little bit more versatile, but it's probably also not the one that's most commonly used. People like to use the other two more than anything. But this one here with this slow setting and the lower ratio can give you a little bit subtler style compression. Down to a 2 to 1 there. Get a bit more aggression and life in your drums there, but without that squashing and grit almost. But obviously you can also push this as well to get similar results as the other ones. And then the other two are the legacy versions. So if I pull both of those up, not sure if you're going to hear a difference or a big difference, but let's just compare the settings again. Now with the legacy ones here, you can't turn off the ratio. All you can do is go from one setting to an all buttons in. You can't turn off the ratio itself and pass it through the hardware, and that's pretty much because they didn't emulate all of those components of the hardware, so there's no point passing it through without doing some compression. So we've got a big difference in volume here. And we're not even getting any compression with that. So this is definitely responding a lot different. Having to push that input up quite a lot to get it to start moving. And it looks like it's similar here as well. We need to push it. Again, each one of these has a different sound and a different quality to it. The controls are all identical, but they do respond differently. You can see the settings I'm having to put the input to compared to on the other versions there. Now, most of the time I would just be using the main ones. I wouldn't use the legacy unless I was really struggling for DSP. So I'm just going to close those down. So one common technique that's used with a plugin like this is to actually crush it. So let's just take that one off there. So, you might grab one of these. And we can go with the all buttons in mode. Push it really hard. So you can hear that distortion there. But then what you would do is, generally what you do is you would place that on a parallel processing and you would blend that in. So you wouldn't do that. So you keep your main drums just slightly compressed and then blend in a crushed signal of it to give more life to it. So we can do that in here where I've got a parallel drums track here. And if we actually look, I'm sending that all drums to the parallel full signal. But I don't have the actual 1176 on, so let's just grab one and we'll go with that one there. I'll just bypass that. So here's our parallel drums here. I'll put that in listen mode. So I'm going to go all buttons, fast, and we're going to push it. Okay, so that's what it sounds like. Now, if we turn that off and let's just reduce the volume, so we take it out. So basically, I've dropped the volume of the P drum, so we're getting no parallel drums now. So we get the sound of our drums, and then we blend in a portion of this squashed, crushed track. So that's without. And that's with it in. So what you're trying to get there is sort of best of both worlds. You're trying to get the dynamics of the natural drums by itself, plus adding a little bit of this crushed compression in there, which brings up a lot of the bottom end, a lot of the room, a lot of the life, and add some grit into it as well. But you're not putting this full amount in, you're just putting a little bit in just to enhance those drums with this signal. Now, how far you push this compressor is totally up to you, the sound you want to go for. But I'll just play it again. As you can see, I've only blended in a little bit, not too much. You know, I mean, that could be too much, but I'm trying to overemphasize this a little bit, but still have it sounding quite nice. So we'll start off with it out. And I'll bring it in. So you could just hear the drums just bang, pop up there. Bit dull, bit flat, not too bad, but you know, not a great deal of life on it. And just new set of life to it. But you don't really hear the sound of what this compressor is doing as such, which is, it sounds like this. But blending in just a little bit, as opposed to at all. You know, you can blend in a lot and make it sound really nasty. So as a sort of a bad example, because I wouldn't do this, but if you've got an acoustic guitar here and it's got a very transient sort of click to it, for every strum, maybe they're jumping out, the little chink, chink. You can compress it. As I said, I'm over compressing here. I would not do this on an acoustic guitar because I like that chink. But if you want to flatten that out a bit, you can obviously do that. Now you can slow it down a bit. But because this is so fast, you're never really going to get that transient back to normal. You are going to crush that transient a little bit. Now you can back it off as well. If you listen to that transient, the tick, tick, tick. It's almost gone there. And that's being fairly subtle. If I sped it up, you can hear the pumping because you can actually hear the back of the note coming up as the compressor's pumping. You can hear the transients chopped off, but the back of the note's actually getting louder. So you can hear it sort of pumping there with the way I've done it. So there you go. That's the UAD 1176 compressor plugin in its various styles and various qualities. So if you've got a UAD system, give them a demo, see what you think. Try them out on your mix, see what you like about them, don't like about them. Alternatively, don't have a UAD system, go and try some of the other ones. Go and try Waves ones out. Go and try any of the other ones that you can find out on the market. There's plenty out there to try and see which one you like or don't like and check it out. So hopefully this has been helpful. Thank you for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.